Mexican Christianity. The idea of the flagellantes, the penitentes, the wearing of a hair shirt, of the frightful rules of convents and the practices to make things uncomfortable. Always make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. You see, that's a very, very important principle of piety. But you see how phony that can be. Because in always congratulate yourself a little bit that you make yourself uncomfortable, you have missed the point. You think you can do something to pay the price. Whereas the hymn says, there was no other good enough to pay the price of sin. He only could unlock the gate of heaven and let us in. Let's look at another aspect of it. Another great feature of Christianity, traditional Christianity, is the Mass. The central act of Christian worship which somehow begins in the Last Supper. A very curious rite. Almost cannibalistic. Salvation through eating the body and drinking the blood of Christ. I wonder if it's occurred to you that blood, the drinking of blood, from a Jewish point of view, is outrageous. Because one of the fundamental rules of Jewish ritual law is that blood is prohibited. When an animal is killed in a kosher way, the blood is, in as far as possible, drained out. Because blood is the life. And it belongs only to God. So in a typical sacrifice, the story of the great sacrifice in which the covenant was originally made between the Hebrews and Yahweh, the blood is poured out on the altar for Yahweh, but sprinkled over the people. Not consumed by them, but sprinkled over them, to show that they have now formed a family with the Lord. But you mustn't eat it. That is absolutely taboo. So a situation where suddenly, to Hebrew people, Jesus says, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. That is almost, in our culture, that would be equivalent to recommending incest. I mean, it would be as shocking as that to them. So then what happens, you see, at this Last Supper? He takes the bread, which is, of course, ground wheat. And the bread is the staff of life. It is, for those cultures, the main ingredient of a meal. Meat and vegetables are a garnishing. Bread is the point, like a tortilla for a Mexican is something you wrap it up, or rice for a Chinese is the staple. But bread for these people. So he says, this is my body. And all of you eat it. And he breaks it and hands it round. Then he takes the cup and says, this is my blood. And you see, even in simile, even in metaphor, this is a terrible thing to say. This is my blood of the new arrangement between God and man, known in Elizabethan English as the New Testament. This is my blood of the new arrangement, which is poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me. Now look at that. This is to say, look, you live by shedding blood. You live by taking life. Please don't feel guilty about it anymore. It's for the remission of sins. Because in all the animals which contribute to your nourishment, it is I who am giving myself to you. So this is in remembrance of me, the me being the self in all of you, the I am who was before Abraham was, or rather the I am who is before Abraham was. I am the way. See, all these sayings contain this subtle meaning underneath them. And in remembrance, as I pointed out to you, the beginning of the creation is dismembering. The fulfillment of it is remembering. Finding out again who you are, ceasing to be lost. So you see, here stands the thing that comes absolutely at you in the whole symbolism of the Christian Mass. Only, the Christians never knew what to do with it. So they said, this is kind of dangerous stuff, this bread and wine. It's God. Once it's consecrated, we put it up the end of the church there. Don't get too close to it. And put it on top of steps. And when the people could have the bread all right, but when they saw in Western Europe all those men coming up to receive the chalices with long drooping mustaches, they said, there'll be desecration of it. You know, they'll go out and they'll kiss some girl, and they want to wipe their mustaches, and they'll drool it in the soup, and our Lord can't be submitted to that. So the priest, who was clean-shaven, usually, he could have the chalice. The people could have the bread, but there's a perfect panic in Catholic ritual that no crumb of that bread or no tiny droplet of that wine shall get control. They lock what remains of the bread in the tabernacle on the altar, which is a safe. And it's been a safe ever since people started the Black Mass. They went and stole it, and they defiled it, and had a rite for Satan instead. But and they drink every drop of the wine. When the priest finishes the chalice, he takes it in his hands like this, and he puts his fingers together, and his acolyte pours water over, and he rubs so that no fragment of bread shall be left on his fingers. And then he drinks the whole thing. And then it's washed out once again, and he drinks that. See, none of that precious stuff must be defiled. Now, read the latest things that are happening in the Vatican. What they're doing now is they've altered all that. No longer is the Mass to be celebrated at the far east end of the church. It's to come right down to the center. And everybody is to gather round. And in as far as possible, everybody is to join in. In other words, it's not just something that the priest mumbles in a corner by himself. But the responses that are said, everybody's supposed to join. But you see what's happened? The thing has become radial instead of addressed to a throne. The picture is the deity, in other words, the divine point is moving into the center. Where is that? The kingdom of heaven is within you, you see? Instead of being something out there. Now, why is this glimmer occurring? This glimmer occurs because the challenge, this have I done for thee, what doest thou for me? And you know, really, it's a pretty bad scene. You're really guilty. You're really awfully responsible. There's no way you can pay for it. You know, like sometimes people say to their children, well, it's no point you're being sorry about it. It's done. And, of course, I can't forgive you now because you may be sorry today, but we'll have to see how your conduct is over a period of weeks before we'll know whether you really decided to reform. Oh, can you make a plea first and feel terrible, you see? And this is much worse than that. What are you to do? See, and you can't expiate by doing that medical missionary bit. Or by suicide. There's no way out. And yet, you must love God, and you know you don't. The only reason you attend church is really because you're afraid. I mean, you may like the minister, and there may be a sort of nice atmosphere around, where the hymns are pleasant, and the ritual is rather lovely. But when it really comes down to that confession thing, where you say, for these and all my other sins which I do not now remember, I am heartily sorry, firmly purpose amendment, do you? You know you don't. You're going to do it again. And that makes you feel all the more guilty, makes you wonder whether you really are forgiven. So you get to a point of impasse. The point at which you realize there is nothing you can do to get the grace of God. Nothing. Because it's all phony.